Okay. So Shrikantji, I was thinking if you and Nikita could take turns reading.
Mhm. Nikita ji, you want to go first?
Sure, but I think you need to. Yeah. Okay, so we're gonna say opening prayer.
Om, that's a good one. Thank you. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanao Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So just yeah, quick. We're I think meeting after 3 weeks. The last 2 weeks I requested time off for Navratri. So thank you for accommodating that. I had a wonderful time doing sadhana. Some things that I've been putting off for a while, and so I got to pick up some of my older sadhanas again with the blessings of my teachers, and now I'm able to fit it within this schedule as well. So great, thank you for that. Yeah, Nikita, if you continue.
Mhm. The invisible result of prayer. In a prayer, what you really release is an invisible force causing the adrishta phala, the unseen result. The very system, the laws that produce certain results which are not visible to us, are reorganized by prayer. Certain elements are introduced through prayer into this invisible system, causing it to reorganize itself. However, we do not know how it will be reorganized. This is why the results are said to be caused by grace. Grace, therefore, is something that we receive purely as a result of our own karma, actions done either in our immediate past or in the remote past. Because of this result, this grace, certain situations happen in our favor. What is generally taken to be impossible is made possible by grace. In fact, all life is like that. The impossible is made possible. With this verse, I salute Bhagavan, the one by whose grace the mute becomes eloquent and the lamb, no, lame, scales mountain tops, the one by whose grace the impossible is made possible. The final verse of the Gita Dhyanam describes the various beings whose praise who praise this all-knowing Lord.
So a couple of comments and um, so there was one question somebody asked me I think 2 years back. Maybe Nikita and Shrikantji, you were part of that signal group, and so you must have seen some of these responses. Somebody asked the question that why do we say Ishvara is compassionate, Ishvara is the Param Dayalu, Ishvara is Karunamai? Why? And there's no good answer for that if a person tries to rationalize it in the typical way, which is, oh, God is all loving, God is all compassionate, God is ever kind, and so on and so forth. That is a very Abrahamic perspective. So then, is the alternative Hindu answer to this that God is not these things? Ishvara is not compassionate, Ishvara is not kind, and the answer to that is also no. That is also not true. So we have to find a way to reconcile this, because the moment you say, okay, look, our guru can be compassionate, your friend can be compassionate, your parent can be compassionate, because these are personifications. We are personified beings presented to one another through some form of a relationship. We all have a relationship with one another, and we all can afford to exude these human emotions of compassion and whatnot. Compassion is very, human related, right? Even animals, of course, exhibit some form of compassion. But then what we do is, if we refer to Ishvara as compassionate, in the sense that a human being is compassionate, then we are reducing Ishvara to a personality in the likeness of the human being. And that is a limitation that we are imposing upon Ishvara. So how do we reconcile this? And so this was the question that was sort of implicitly discussed in this group, maybe 3 years back. And I thought about it, and I was like, here's what I think is the answer. We have laws. on the one hand, we have laws which govern the cosmos. The laws are impartial. The law of gravity affects everybody. The law of electromagnetism affects everybody and everything for that matter. Likewise, the law of karma impacts everyone. So now, if we only leave it at that, which is that the laws of karma are as they are, then where does the element of compassion come into the picture? It's a conundrum. Because on the one hand, we say that karma is impartial because jaisa karo, vaisa bharo. As you sow, so you reap. Then how can Ishvara be compassionate by giving somebody else some favorable karma? Because Ishvara would be showing favor to one person versus another. And if Ishvara were compassionate to everybody, then the law of karma itself would be compromised. Because then, if a person does pap karma, then what about the results of the pap karma? Essentially, a way to say is that the punya karma that we talk about is Ishvara's compassion. But then what about pap karma? See, now, if we start digging into this question, there are all sorts of issues. The way I reconcile it in my mind is you have certain laws in the cosmos which bridge distances. For instance, if you have potential energy, it flows from high to low. If you put a ball here, it falls down. Everything wants to find its ground state, right? In nature. Everything in nature wants to find its ground state. Water flows from the top to the bottom, and then it forms a lake. Electricity flows from a higher potential or higher voltage to a lower voltage, and it finds a ground state. That's why you have this earthing wire also, the grounding, the charge there. That's why even when you're doing dhyanam, they say that you should not sit directly exposed to the exposed ground on the exposed ground, but you should have some sort of asana. It could be a non-conducting material like a woolen mattress or something of that sort. So everything in the Jagat wants to find a ground state. If you have an excited atom with its electrons in the outer orbits, they will again fall back into the inner orbits and release a photon of light. So the law of the cosmos is such that everything wants to come back to its ground state. That is not agency that is inbuilt into the cosmos. That is a very law through which the cosmos functions. Does that make sense so far? So now, if we talk about Ishvara and compassion, my perspective here, it is just a model. I'm not saying this is what Vedanta says, but this is the way I rationalize it, is that there is a certain way, a certain algorithm, a certain manner in which the prarabdha karma unfolds, which is most favorable to take jivas to the very ground state, which is who I am, which is myself, which is moksha. The recognition of who I am is what we call moksha. The recognition of who I am is mukti. And the closest possible distance that you can have between avidya to vidya is the manner in which the prarabdha karma unfolds to take the jiva fastest to that outcome of who I am. And over here, if you see, if a person has done infinite amount of pap karma in the past, which we all have, and an infinite amount of punya karma in the past, now we have two infinities we are dealing with. The head cannot process this easily. We cannot process very large numbers, forget processing infinities. Because infinities, for all intents and purposes, are equal. If a person has done a little bit more pap karma or a little less punya karma, but when you have an infinite bag, they are all equal only. But here we call it Ishvara's compassion, because the punya karma is going to fructify in the form of one's prarabdha in a manner that is ever favorable for one to go from avidya to vidya, from ajnanam to jnanam. And therefore, opportunities such as a guru, such as Vedanta Shastra, such as an inclination, a proclivity towards the study of Shastra, towards Guru Bhakti, Ishvara Bhakti, all of these things are mental proclivities, which are impressions based on our own prarabdha karma, which incline us towards these teachings, which hasten our approach towards knowledge. Yes.
If punya karma fructifies into prarabdha karma that leads one from avidya to vidya jnana, what about the papa karma? What happens in that case?
The Papa Karma is also there, but here in every single, because you have an infinite amount of karmas, Punya and Papa Karma, some of them have to take precedence in terms of which one unfolds sooner. So, for instance, you take any great Mahatma, take Puja Swamiji. As you know, he's always a good template because he's the one that I knew well and I take to be a great jnani. And even in his account, the Sanchita account, there must be an infinite amount of pap karma. Like everybody, anybody you talk about, even Adi Shankaracharya you talk about, infinite amount of pap karma in the past. But a certain set of punya karmas will unfold, which will be sufficient for mukti to be gained.
Okay.
And why it will be sufficient for mukti to be gained is not because punya karma leads to mukti, but punya karma creates the circumstances that allow one to walk on the path of mukti to reveal self-knowledge in
And
one form or the other.
and is this a result of the grace that's being talked about here?
That is the grace, but that grace is also the shortest path between ignorance to knowledge in the manner in which the prarabdha karma unfolds, which we attribute in a personified form to Ishvara as grace. But it is grace because yes, Nikita.
S- This is something I always wondered about. So, in a case like this, if you attain mukti, then what happens to pap karma?
It is as good as not there. Even the punya is as good as not there. Because the pap karma and the punya karma belong to the karmi, the one who has performed the karma. For the one who has given up the notion of doership, and here the knowledge is not gained by giving up the notion of doership. The notion of doership is an outcome of ignorance. Okay, so I just want to clarify that. A lot of people are like, oh, if I treat myself as a non doer, then I will not attach any new karmas to myself. No, 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 that is all rubbish. One cannot say that I am a non doer as a starting point. The non doership or Naishkarmya bhava, the Naishkarmya karma is the result of Atmajnana. That I know who I am and what I am is the non-agent. It is the that in the presence of which actions take place, but I myself am not the doer. I am that in the presence of which everything is being done without being a participant to those actions at all. That person who sees oneself as that person is the one who is the jnani. And for that person, does he perform any actions any longer? No, because that person is not the person anymore. So who performs the actions? The person, the jiva. The jiva continues to perform actions, but the jiva knows the identity of the jiva as not the doer. So doing happens without doing. Eating happens without eating. Sleeping happens without sleeping. Talking happens without talking. It happens because it is prakriti. It is the nature of the fundamental forces that are governing our biological being, which allow these actions to happen with the force, the fuel of prarabdha karma, which make these actions happen. That is why in the Gita also it is said that it is prakriti that makes these things happen. It is, Krodha has a life of its own, Kama has a life of its own because there's a certain Vega, a force associated with these Prakritis, these different gunas that dance and that, waltz together in this very intricate sort of pattern. And they play out, these actions are played out, but I am actually not the doer. Because if you ask yourself, because that's a great question, if you ask yourself, who is performing an action? Who is it? You can say, I am performing the action. Okay, who is this I? I've picked up a pen. But then who is this I? Is it the hand? It cannot be the hand. If the I is the hand has picked up the pen. Then can you say that it is the one who willed the pen to be picked up by the hand? No, because that is the mind. I cannot be the mind also. Because we know that I am the witness to my thoughts. I'm the witness to the qualities of my action. I know my actions, I also know my inactions. So then you have to say that is it the Sakshi? No, the one who is witness to it all. And the short answer is no, because it can't be the Sakshi also in the limited sense. Because the Sakshi, as most people understand it in contemporary vocabulary, is not the one who is the witness to the thoughts. They talk about all this in Buddhist meditation, all that, oh, you are the witness, you are the. See, that is not Vedanta. You are not the witness. You're that in the presence of which things happen. But if you are the witness to your own thoughts, that means that I'm still confined to my limited body mind sense complex that I am able to witness. But what about your body mind sense complex, which I cannot witness? The problem, because Atma is that which is without limitations, but then here I've limited it to my particular construct. What about your construct? Is that a different Atma? Do you have a different witness? Does somebody else have a third witness? It
So,
creates a problem. Yeah.
Prashant ji, so yeah, lots of this thing
Yeah, yeah.
clarification. Yeah. So first thing is the first most recently, yeah, just you mentioned about the doership, right? So what is it when we identify as will result in me being the doer or my sense of doership, which um, in results in karma, like generation of punya, papa, and all that.
It is my identification as the Buddhi.
Buddhi.
Because the Buddhi is the one who takes ownership over the actions of the body mind sense complex.
Okay.
The Manaha is where the action is the results are processed in some sense, right?
Right.
Because you feel and you know. And here
It's
I'm reducing this
driven
down.
by the buddhi.
Hmm?
It's driven by the buddhi. The actions are.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm going to apply a little bit of a twist here because that is what I gave a very cop out answer. Okay, so I gave a very cop out response here because that's like you want to put certain answer out there in the world, and so okay, then you can say it is a buddhi, and then the discussion ends there. But that is not it. So I'm going to get into a little bit detail over here, and let me try to weave some of these topics together.
Mhm.
So when we talk about the manaha and the buddhi, we say the buddhi is superior as per the Gita. It is Shrestha compared to the Manaha. The Manaha is, I don't want to call it the mind, but let's call it Manaha only. Let's not translate too much. I think everybody understands Manaha and everybody understands Buddhi as vocabulary. Now, suppose I say, what is Manaha? You have different Indriyas. Indriyas are the senses. I look at, this green color. The sense of sight is taking in this greenness of the pencil. The greenness of the pencil is processed in the manaha. The greenness of the pencil is known to the manaha. The manaha sees the green. The buddhi ascertains it that green asti. This is green. The manaha simply sees. The buddhi concludes. So that is why it is considered a little superior. Because the buddhi is a second order function. The manaha is only the intake process. The buddhi is the one that makes conclusions about what is taken in. So, if initially when I started studying Vedanta, and I suppose for several years, my understanding of the Manan Buddhi was very warped until I read Pujya Swamiji further. Initially, what we think is emotional mind is Manaha, and then the decisive mind is the Buddhi. That is not true, because the Buddhi can also feel, in the sense that it is able to process the emotions. It is able to process the emotions. It is able to take it in and also compute the nature of it, of something. So suppose I feel a certain way, then I can sit with that feeling and I can analyze that feeling also. And I know what that feeling is. That, oh, I felt angry right now. I just felt jealous of that person who got a promotion. Right? I can feel that. First, you just feel a certain thing, but you've not come to any conclusion about it. But the buddhi is what allows you to label and categorize. The buddhi categorizes and puts things into boxes. And that is why it is superior to the manaha, because the manaha is very animalistic, because every animal also takes in sense inputs. But only the human being has an evolved buddhi, which allows us to analyze those inputs. Now, the buddhi also, when it performs actions, when it writes something, let's say if you're in a trance and you just scribble, 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 whatever, whatever, and something comes out of it. That is not buddhi. That is still just there's no operation involved over there. It is just your subconscious playing out without any agency whatsoever. But the moment you apply a certain agency, that you decide to do something and you do it, that doership is also associated with the buddhi, because the buddhi is both the one that does, but also the one that is categorizing. It is the categorizer and it is a doer. That is what the buddhi is. So and it is subtler than the manaha. because it is a little more difficult to give up also, the Kartutva Bhava.
So when we attain jnana, we stop identifying ourselves with the body mind sense complex, due to which our sense of doership uh, withers away or disappears, due to which, as a side effect, the Naishkarmya bhava happens.
That is a good question. And have you heard of the expression confounding variable in statistics? So I'll give you a real input here, based on a real life situation. It is reported that when more people consume ice creams, there are also more drownings reported during the time period when more ice creams are consumed. So now one may mistake ice creams responsible for drowning. But there is a confounding variable, which is that the cause and effect correlation is not between ice cream and drowning, but rather there is a third variable, a confounding variable, which is the cause for both of these effects. And the effects are correlations, not causes.
Okay.
And that third confounding variable over here is the summer season, because you'll go swimming in summer and you'll also have more ice cream in summer. But ice cream does not cause drowning. It's just the fact that it's summer and you want to step out and you want to go to the beach. And then you also want to eat more ice cream because it's hot. So in the same way, this Kartutva Bhava and Ajnana go away together, but it is actually the destruction. Well, it's not even a destruction, it's the elimination of the notion that I am the limited being that is destroyed, which results in Naishkarmya Siddhi. But the Naishkarmya Siddhi is also co-eval, simultaneous with the relinquishing of doership. But the relinquishing of doership is not the cause of the Naishkarmya Siddhi. The cause of Naishkarmya Siddhi is Atmajnana.
Okay.
Or avidya nivritti. That's a better way to put it. Avidya nivritti is the cause, because there is the avidya that I am the doer, but it is also the avidya that I am limited. It is also the avidya that I am a human being. It's also the avidya that I am male. It's also the avidya that I am female. This avidya, in one fell swoop, all of the conclusions, including that I am a doer, are destroyed. Okay, so that the multiple conclusions pertaining to the mistaken notion of who I am are all destroyed with avidya, destroyed. And that is what gives rise to Nishkarmya Siddhi.
Okay.
Good question. So this is what Ishvara's compassion is really, which is that it is the shortest route from avidya to vidya, as inbuilt into the cosmic laws, as inbuilt into the unfolding of one's prarabdha karma. That is why when one reaches out to Ishvara, what are you actually reaching out to? You can relate to Ishvara as a person. You can relate to Ishvara. There's nothing wrong in that. I'm not denying this at all. I also do that sometimes. Navratri was there. Ishvara was Devi for me right now. Oh my goodness. It was a very blessed Navratri. Where Ishvara took a new, I guess, form in some sense in my life. And you can relate to Ishvara as the mother. You can relate to Ishvara as the father. You can relate to Ishvara as the friend. You can relate to Ishvara as the Guru, Dakshinamurti. And you can relate to Ishvara as your own Guru also, which is also fine. Your Guru is Ishvara only. Ishvara Guru Atmeti Murti Veda Vibhagini. Vyoma Vadvyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurte Nama. So this Ishvara, Dakshinamurti, is present in the form of the Guru, is present in the form of Ishvara, and is present in the form of the very self, as the Atma. Ishvara Guru Atmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine. So that is what it is. So then what happens over here is that when you reach out to Ishvara, in whatever form you reach out to Ishvara, you're touching the whole, because it should be very clear that Ishvara is not only the form in which I relate to Ishvara. That should be clear. Suppose I say that, okay, I am a great Krishna Bhakta, but Ishvara is only Krishna, then I've excluded Shiva. If I say Ishvara is only Shiva, then I've excluded somebody else. And I've excluded all the forms. But when you take the forms as a starting point, as the indication of that which is all forms and also beyond forms, then that recognition of Ishvara is there and every single form becomes legitimate. And so when you reach out to Ishvara, you are reaching out to the whole. When you reach out to the whole, a certain prarabdha is activated, which allows you to see yourself as that whole. And that is Ishvara's compassion. Because Ishvara, now, is Ishvara compassionate? Answer is yes. But we had to see this in a very roundabout way. Because you can't just give a binary yes or no response over here. It has to be seen and understood. Ishvara is compassionate because the laws themselves are compassionate. That's what it is. Okay, any questions here before we proceed?
So the prayer is the is an invocation to the law, the very laws themselves, or is that not connected?
I lost you for like 5 seconds. Can you repeat that again?
Sorry, I was asking the here we are talking about grace, right? And grace is, I think, what we mention as the fructification of the punya karma, and the leading from avidya to vidya. The 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 title of this particular paragraph is the invisible result of prayer. Is the intent then to say that this happens, this, the manifestation of grace, and its fructification in our lives happens because of Ishvara, because of the prayer to Ishvara? Is that the
Because you're reaching out to the whole. You're
okay?
reaching out to the whole, and what is the whole is you. And so this is like, something gets activated when you're taking a step closer towards who you are also. Very beautiful. Because Ishvara is not different from the self. But we start off that way. We start off that way because that's how everybody begins their journey, with that Bhed Bhava. That, oh
Right.
Bhagwan, you are different, I am different, I need help, you can help, please help me. We start that way. And then slowly we begin to move from this, this Bhakta level 1 to Bhakta level 2 to Bhakta level 3, Jignasu and then Jnani. So that is also going to be spoken about in the Gita, no? The 4 types of Bhaktas. And Bhagwan says very clearly that all of them are Priya. They are all dear to me. You can't say, okay, this you are a lesser Bhakta, I am a greater Bhakta. It's different levels based on Adhikara Bheda. You teach a child in a certain way, and you teach an adult in a different way, and you teach a teenager in a different way. Everybody has their own language of communication. So that is how Bhagwan reaches out to everyone. But that is what it is. Ishvara's laws are compassionate, and therefore Ishvara is compassionate. Because if you see it as process mapping also, it would be very clumsy of Bhagwan to individually go and reach out to every single person. Oh, you're also drowning, come I'll save you. Oh, you're also drowning, come I'll save you. No. You create you create a certain framework where everybody can be equally saved. Because that is a law. That is a process. You have 2 modalities to view life. One is a process orientation and the other is an event orientation. Event orientation is very ad hoc. कि अभी ये भी करो अभी वो भी करो. Process is like चलो we fix this thing and everything else will be fixed. That is how Ishvara functions, because Ishvara is Sarva Jnani, no? All knowledge is as Ishvara. Whatever our limited minds can process, Bhagwan can process infinitely more. It's all Ishvara.
So by prayer, when we reach out to the whole, which is yourself, and we create a framework, is that adding to that punya karma fructification path directly, versus the to negate some of the papa karma, and eventually move to the jnana?
Both function. So there are like certain prayers, Kara Charana Krutam Va Kayajam Karma, like where you are also asking to negate certain pap karmas done. There also you reach out to Ishvara. And then there are certain prayers where you're bypassing that karma model itself. See, at the end of the day, Swamini, I asked this question I had some karma related question, asked to Swamini ji. And I'll share the details of it like after the call, essentially, private stuff. But what she said in her response is that, Prashant, you're still speaking from the karma model perspective. Now what this response requires is the Vedantic model, Vedanta 2.0. In Vedanta 1.0, we are like, okay, there's Jeev, Jagat, Ishvara. Okay, that's what we study. You Tvam Pada, Tat Pada, Panchakoshas, this, that, and all. That is all 1.0. Where, of course, it's a very important starting point. But in Vedanta 2.0, one even puts behind karma and karma yoga. Now that is not to say that one can flout, the dharma and do all sorts of things. No, 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 no. These are categories that have to be conquered and moved beyond. One cannot bypass them. I cannot say that I'm going to become a great, great, great Mahatma, but I'm going to skip this whole karma yoga because it's not important. You transcend it, you don't skip it. And the transcending only happens when you've mastered it. Yoga karmasu kaushalam. When you've mastered a certain framework in which to function in life, then that functioning becomes a natural outcome of who you are. Karmas are just flowing out without you being a karmi. And slowly, 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 that kartutva bhava keeps sublimating. It sublimates into Ishvara, but you can't do it in one shot. See, first, what happens is that I take myself as a doer, but I can't suddenly go from doer to non-doer. No, there has to be a whole pathway in between that where I have to walk. And in between that pathway, also, it is very important to take Ishvara as the doer. I am the agent. No, I'm not even the agent. I am the conduit through which Ishvara's agency is expressed. First, I start as behaving as the agent of action, and I adhere to dharma. I move away from adharma, and I treat myself as a karma nishtha. That I am a karma yogi. I do my this, I do my that, and I do it all with the Ishwar Arpana Bhava. And then I do my Agnihotra karma, and I do this karma, and I do the Shraddha karma, and I do that karma. I do all of these karmas. I'm a doer. No. Vedas also talk about that. You are a doer. You do all of these things. But after that, that is what gives you maturity. You become a disciplined person, you become a responsible person, you become a contributor, not a consumer only. You start contributing to society also, you contribute to the welfare of your family, of your neighbors, of your loved ones, everyone. And then after that, the same Vedas say, okay, bhai, abhi you've done all of these actions, but now you start doing this arpana. It's all, for the sake of Ishvara, not for your own sake. So that is another step in one's perspective and evolution. Then it says that, okay, look, you've done, you have a great attitude of karma yoga, your habits have been cleared and cleaned, your antakarana is relatively shuddha. Now start seeing Ishvara as the agent of action, and you are simply the conduit of action. The actions pass through you, but they are being done by Ishvara. So now that is also great. I don't think we are we are there yet in terms of our attitudes day in and day out. We have glimpses of it, but we don't have that abidance in that attitude yet, right? But that is something to cultivate. But after that, finally, you have to see that. See, if I am not the doer, then Ishwar also can't be the doer, na? If Shastra says that, oh Prashant, you're not the doer actually, the Atma is not the doer, then how can we say, oh Ishwara, you are the doer? सब तुम ही करते हो मैं तो कुछ करता ही नहीं you give me all, you are so kind, you're so compassionate, you're so sweet, you give me all of this stuff. And even Ishwara is not the doer. And that is when Kartutva Bhava is cultivated, when Jnana is removed. So these are different steps, like in the Devi tradition, in the Shakta tradition. Even when people do bhog, you have different proclivities over here. No, some people talk about as Swamiji spoke about in one of her talks, the 5 M's. They have their own beautiful paddhati, but there is a certain tamasic, rajasic predisposition that they have, and Devi shows them how to grow even out of that. You cannot say that, oh, only we Sattvic people who are, very Shuddha and this and that, only we are eligible for the blessings of Devtas. No, everybody is eligible. No matter who you are, where you are, what you do, you are eligible to receive Ishvara's grace in the fullest, to the fullest extent. All that Ishvara requires is that hand reaching out. Yeah, there's this painting by Michelangelo, no? Where I think that one. No, I like that. I like that because Ishvara has got his figure out, but it requires somebody to connect with it. That's how I see it. I like it. And so now, when you talk about it, like, I'll give you a very simple example. Today, if you live in the West, you have these underground movements. You have the goth people. You have people listening to death metal, black metal. If you want to torture your antakarana for a few minutes, go look up black metal and go to Google Images and listen to some of their music. Black metal, okay? You'll be like, okay, what do people listen to? but there's a certain I don't know, there's a certain aesthetic there which I can see myself being drawn to if I allow it. Okay, I have a very dark side to myself, so I don't want to get too much into that. But I can see how I can be driven in those directions if I just allow myself to be. And what happens is ki, what do those people do to attain Ishvara? Because they seem so far out from mainstream society and so far out from our lived experience that there's no way that you can relate to them. Then how can they relate to Ishvara? So now you transpose those types of people, but now you replace them with agodis. The only difference here is that they are all outcast in some sense. You know, they don't live in mainstream society, but they have found a way in which to relate to Ishvara. So how do the regular people like us relate to Shiva? Oh, you know, great Bhagwan sitting on the Himalayas with his eyes closed and meditating. Oh, so sattvic. And how do these people relate to him? Bhutnath, with a whirlwind, a tornado of ghosts, going around Shiva, and the one who's sleeping in the cremation grounds, because Shiva is ultimately found in the cremation grounds also, and he's smeared with ashes all over, and he has a terrible form also. Kala Bhairava is a very terrible form, but he also has a very uh, gentle form. As the Umapati, as the family man, as the kind, happy Shiva with little bit Ganesha sitting here and Kartikeya over here and giving a hug to Parvati and sitting in the mountains and blessing everyone this way. But then you have this fierce form of Shiva as Kala Bhairava, and then you have this very gentle form of Devi. Amba Ma, or you have Lakshmi Ma or Saraswati Ma. They're like always smiling. But then you also have Kalima with a lolling tongue, with a garland of skulls, ready to bite your head off if you are an asura, with blood dripping, from her weapons, astras. So these forms of Bhagwan are also Ishvara only, but these are forms that are more relatable to certain different types of personalities, and that is their pathway to growth. See, this is the exquisite beauty of Sanatana Dharma, that only over here we have Ishvara in the gentle forms as well as the Ugra Rupas. And now the Ugra Rupas are also very special in the sense that if you want quick results, seriously, if you want very quick results, you go to the Ugra Rupas. And they will give you results like this. But they will also have certain conditions. Okay. The gentle forms will give you gentle results slowly. The Ugra Rupas will give you quick results, but you'll have to follow very strict paddhatis. And you cannot veer away from that approach, the prescribed approach. Huh?
Prashantji, you mentioned something of tremendous interest to me regarding the Ugra Rupas and this. But if we want to tie it back to this topic of the result of the prayer, is it all still leading to the same goal of avidya to vidya? Is
Yes.
the okay? So when you say Ugra Rupa will give faster results relatively, then what are like what is it that's what is it that what is it that causes those results to uh, fructify faster? What is the pathway? Like, I'm unable to tie it to this, this grace and the nature of the prayer itself, the difference between these two
That's
paths.
excellent. That's excellent. And the way I would put it is, think of a mountain whose peak you have to scale. You have to reach the top of the peak. Now you have two pathways. Okay, you could either carve a path in the mountain and go round, 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 gentle incline and reach up. Anybody can go up that, or you could go rock climbing. Okay, now with the rock climbing, you'll reach up faster, but it's also much tougher. So the toughness over here, the paddhatis are the very specialized mantras that you have to do in a very specialized way, in a very certain specific time, at a very certain specific place. Some sadhanas you do in smashans, some sadhanas you do by the river, some sadhanas you do surrounding yourself with these kavacham mantras. You have to do all of these things. Some sadhanas you do where you invoke different for lack of a better term, different beings, different spirits from different dimensions who are able to aid you in certain sadhanas also. You see, you can do all of these things and it will get you there also, but there is also an element of danger involved that you have to do it exactly right. Otherwise, you are also in trouble. And so it is like rock climbing, that you'll get there to the top faster, but you might also fall down. And you can also hurt yourself if you don't have the right gear, and if you don't have the right cords, and if you don't have the right safety harness, and if you don't have the strength in your biceps and your quadriceps to climb. You need all of that conditioning also. If you see these shaktas, wait, I'll remove the share screen. If you see all of these shaktas and all, there's a certain ferocity in their eyes also. Have you ever seen, like, proper shakta upasakas? They have something that it's hard to quantify or it's hard to describe, but there's a fierceness behind them. Okay, and that's because they've prepared the antakarana, the body and the mind in a certain manner that enables them to offer those kinds of bhaktis. Like, there have been instances also where have you heard of what is that, shava sadhana? Shava sadhana. Anybody? Okay, so I don't recommend trying it, but shava sadhana is essentially you go to a graveyard at night, because what better time to go, right? And there should be certain planetary conditions also. Maybe I don't know exactly. I've not done that. I don't want to do that. But probably like a moonless night, amavas or whatever, or Poonam or something. Okay, and you go there and you do certain sadhanas, and you find the cadaver of a recently deceased body, and you start doing these upasanas. I do not upasanas, you start something. I don't even know what to call them, but you start doing these certain karmas, and temporarily you can make that body, the dead body, the bones and all, stand up. You can do that, and that is a mark of accomplishment for certain sects of Agoris as well. There are other, very ugra upasanas like these also. Now, we are also happy. People are watching their Netflix and they are, going out for a walk in the park and things like that. But all around us, everywhere, are also different beings. Most of them don't care and they just do their own business. But you can also tap into these other beings.
So
There are
Prashant,
certain, huh?
sorry, just on that topic, the we have chosen to follow this this path of Vedanta to kind of learn and um, seek knowledge. Are you saying that the um, there is a completely different path where we have this deification of the Ugra Rupas and the sadhanas and everything to invoke them to essentially achieve the same goal, but because of my gunas and my own vrittis, I choose to do that versus the path that is laid out by Adi Shankara with Vedanta knowledge. Is that a correct way to think about it, or no? Or there's no separation there?
Slightly incorrect. Slightly incorrect. Because the moment we say two different paths, means we are seeing that there are two different ways to arrive at knowledge.
Right.
Knowledge, matlab, see, there's only one way to gain mukti. There's no two ways. There's only one way, that is to Atmajnana.
Okay.
Whatever, part of the universe, you might be an alien, you might be anybody, but the only way in which self-knowledge can be gained is through self-knowledge. And self-knowledge can only be gained through recognizing myself as Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. There's no second way, so there's no path. That is the only way to get there. Through
Okay.
knowledge, through Shavanam, Mananam, Nidhyasana. So that we put aside, okay? Now, these other two paths are not really paths, but they are two different proclivities,
Mhm.
which are going to help one in to reach a certain level of Antakarana Shuddhi, but not knowledge. So
Okay.
I can gain Antakarana Shuddhi even if I'm, one of those black metal people. If I'm able to relate to Ishvara in a certain form that appeals to me, see, those black metal people are not going to worship Saraswati Devi. Okay, one is like extreme Sattva, the other is extreme Rajas, Tamas mixture. Yeah, I've created this mental model. I'll get into it again at some point about different genres of music and how they distribute across the Guna spectrum. But yeah, these people are like hardcore, Rajas Tamas spectrum, all about death and all about decay and all about like this, the Western symbolism, devil worship, and about all about death and uh, worshipping the dead and discussing the pointlessness of life, nihilism, all of these things. So, very tamasic, and like it can stir you in a very bad way. Like try to listen to some goth music or try to listen to black metal. You listen to it for 15, 20 minutes, and after that, there will be a certain unease which will follow you for the rest of the day. Somewhere you'll feel a knot in the pit of your stomach after you listen to it, because it has come from a place of deep tamas and deep rajas, extreme ends of that. So for such people, the sattvic forms of worship will not appeal to them, so there will not be any growth involved. So they need somebody like this very ferocious form of Shiva, with the with Shiva or some form like Kali, that is able to shake them out of their stupor and uplift them at their own level, to speak to them in their own language, such that they are able to relate to that form of Ishvara and they can go towards growth. It's all about relating to Ishvara through the gunas.
So the marga is different, but the eventual goal is still the same. The goal of attaining that knowledge.
The path is only one, and that path is that self-knowledge has to be gained. But these margas, these different margas, are not for the knowledge, but these
Mhm.
margas are for the shuddhi.
Shuddhi. Okay.
Knowledge has only one way to arrive at it, which is through Shavanam, Mananam, Nidhasanam.
Okay.
But Antakarana Shuddhi has an infinite number of paths that one can
Ah,
take to. It is all about Karma Yoga, not about Jnana Yoga.
okay.
And so they have these different sadhanas. If you see some of the forms of you have kaulas and kapalikas. Kapal means skull. Even in Gujarati, kapal means skull. So these, what they do is, once a human being is dead or something, they will not kill anybody. Okay, so don't be afraid. But once somebody has died of natural causes, they will take the skull and they will use it as a cup for drinking water. And they maybe will fill it with alcohol, they'll fill it with fermented stuff, they'll maybe uh, try some substances out, all sorts of things. And this is not only in India, but it's common to where Nikita also stays, right? South America, you have ayahuasca in the Brazilian rainforest, and Chile and Puerto Rico and those areas, they have ayahuasca. You know, I might try it out someday, one day. I want to, because I want to see what it's like. Like I said, I have a certain side to me. And if, what are some other practices? They have a mother. So you have people who drink alcohol, and then these kaulas and kapalikas, they will also consume meat,
Right.
which is very, again, tamasic rajasic. But for them, that proclivity is already there, and so they might as well use that to uplift themselves. But for us, like, the prescription is that why start at all? Because you want to, because in some ways, if you look at it, the forms of Ishvara that we relate to, they're, every single form of Ishvara is legitimate. Okay, you cannot say that one form is better or worse than the other. In fact, the story of the Sringeri Acharya, 35th Jagadguru, Sri Abhinav Vidyatit Mahaswamiji, he's also, one of his Ishta Devatas was actually Narasimha, which is again an Ugra Rupa of Vishnu. And every single form of Bhagwan also has an associated Ugra Rupa. There's a story, like, for example, Ambika, like my daughter, right? So there's a certain form of Parvati where she sheds the Parvati figure and is revealed as Ambika. And that Ambika figure then further reveals another form called Kali. And then you have different forms of Devi. There's Bhadrakali also. I forget the story in the Shiva Puran, but I believe it's Kala Bhairava and Bhadrakali who are performing a rampage of destruction at Daksha's Yajna, something like that. There are these two very ferocious, fierce forms of Bhagwan that come out. So Ganapati also has a very fierce form. We all see Ganapati as this, oh, cute, tummy bellied, happy person, and especially these cartoon depictions of Ganapati where he's like sitting like this and looking very sweet and all. But Ganapati also has a very ferocious form. And the Ganapati upasanas are not very straightforward. They are actually there's a certain paddhati involved. Okay, Ganesha was ultimately, he was a warrior. He was a Gana. He was a warrior of Shivas. He was one of Shiva Gana. He was Ganadipati. He was the leader of all the Ganas. So he's not a cute tubby toy. He's a warrior also. So anyway, this is what I wanted to discuss a little bit about prayers and relating to Ishvara. Any questions?
So these devatas are not. So I read somewhere that we Hindus, we uh, sometimes depict God as punitive because we feel guilty about our karmas and wrongdoing and all that stuff. So that is not the correct interpretation of this at all.
That would be a very Freudian interpretation of, which is that Ishvara is in the likeness of humans.
Hmm.
Ishvara is not in the likeness of humans. Ishvara is relatable to humans, but not in our likeness,
Hmm.
because otherwise it would be a human construct. The the forms, because this is a good question, and it took me a while to really think about it and grapple with this. The f- okay, I'm trying to gather my thoughts and put this
Hmm.
very clearly. We have an infinite number of available forms in all the sample probability size of space. Okay, you have a probability size of sample space all around. Think of every single conceivable form that can fill this probability space. Every form that you can think of. Every single shape, every single zigzag, every single whatever it is. There are an infinity of shapes conceptually possible in this cosmos. Out of those infinity of shapes that are there, some subset of shapes have manifest in front of us as the visible cosmos, right? There's a certain world around us, there's a certain shape to the galaxies, to the stars, to your pen, to your phone, whatever it may be. Out of an infinite possibility of shapes filling the entire sample size of all possible shapes, there are a subset of forms that actually inhabit the cosmos, of realizable forms. Now, out of those forms also, there's a smaller subset of forms, which is also an infinite number, but that infinity of forms are forms which are archetypal forms that we can relate to, that were revealed to the rishis. So these forms of Ishvara are seen by the rishis as they are described in the Puranas and the other granthas, and starting with the Vedas also. These forms are described. If you see Veda Suktam, you might be familiar with Veda Suktam. No? So there's a certain form of Saraswati involved over there. And so you see that there's a prototype Saraswati in Veda Sukta. There's a prototype Lakshmi in Sri Sukta. There's a prototype Durga in Durga Sukta. And of course, the Puranas, when I say prototype, I mean that the Puranas embellished those prototypes further and fleshed it out even further. And those were the forms that were seen by the rishis of all the possible forms that they could have seen. But these were the forms that were revealed to the rishis by Ishvara, which is Ishvara appeared to the rishis in these specific forms because these were the forms that were relatable to human beings to able to um nurture their growth. Have you watched 2001 Space Odyssey? Anybody? Okay, so you remember that monolith? There's a certain monolith form that those monkeys, apes, look at the beginning of the film, and then they basically learn how to use tools. That form is stimulating a certain growth in the apes, where they become aware that they have an opposable thumb and fingers, and they're able to wield this as a weapon, and they're able to use the bones of deceased monkeys to fight with each other. And then it kind of fast forwards into the future, which I love the transition. An ape throws the bone up. That bone is going up and flying in the air, and it's like moving this way, like this way, this way. And suddenly it goes into the future, and this bone has now become a spaceship. And it has shown that okay, humans have come so far. We've come from apes all the way to being in outer space. And it's kind of like that monoliths fermented a certain process of evolution in those apes for them to be able to start using technology and become like more human like us. In the same way, these forms were revealed to the rishis in the way that would foster human evolution to fulfill and manifest their fullest potential and to come towards mukti. So these forms were not happenstance, but they were revealed to the rishis by Ishvara. And the forms were of Ishvara. The forms of Ishvara revealed by Ishvara to the rishis for our growth so that we may grow, so that we may evolve, so that we may attain Shuddhi, so that we may take it to Ishvara, take Ishvara's hand, touch, connect the finger, and so that we may move towards moksha. That is how it is. That is my speculation. And I think I don't think it's too far from what it would be. Because otherwise you can say that any form I can turn into Ishvara, I can turn this pencil into Ishvara, but no. Ishvara was not revealed in the form of a pencil. Ishvara was revealed in a certain set of forms, and those forms are very specific. There's a certain way Dakshinamurti Bhagavan is supposed to hold the hand out. There are 4 different hands. One hand holds the fire, the other hand holds the Vedas, one hand is Tattvamasi Mudra. There's another hand which is holding the mala, the japa mala. All of these forms were seen by the rishis for our own growth, and they are archetypal. And these forms get augmented through the Puranic stories because it's all built upon the same kernel. I can't go and compose a Purana, neither can you. These Puranas were given to us by the rishis. That's why these forms are sacred. That's why the Shilpis, no? Shilpis they are called. The Karigars who turned a piece of rock into a murti. Well, they don't turn it into a murti, they turn it into a statue. And then the statue is consecrated and becomes a murti. The consecration is the prana pratishtha, which infuses the murti with prana, with life. And then it becomes, Sakshat Ishvara in front of us. That's why you're able to worship that. But you can't do that to this pencil. Now, some people, Devtas and great rishis and Mahatmas could do that, but they could infuse a blade of grass with certain mantras and turn that into an astra. They could turn a blade of grass. Even in Ramayana, I think Sita Ma does that, no? Or Ram Bhagwan does that. Somewhere, in some incident where he turns a blade of grass into a projectile arrow. So, that is also possible, but that is all prana pratishtha. You're embodying a certain prana shakti into an inanimate object and turning it into an animate object. That is how those Divya Astras, where they shoot those Varun Astra and Agni Astra and Brahmastras, those Astras are not just, what do you call it? They're not just arrows. They are infused with Prana Shakti. And every Astra that you release takes a little bit of your own Prana Shakti. But where does that Prana Shakti come from? It's come from Mantra Sadhana. And that's why Arjuna and others, they had to do sadhana for years and years and years to be able to cultivate that mantra shakti so that they can take those inanimate objects and turn it into embodied forms of devatas. Very, very beautiful. If you actually see what we take to be Sanatana Dharma as only a sliver of all of the reality that is there. And that's why, the last 2 weeks, I just said that I'm going to keep my mouth shut and I'm going to just soak up a lot of stuff. And that's why ideas flow, because every now and then you need to take that break. Because the more you speak, the less you're able to, Vak is also Shakti. There's Vak Shakti. And it has to be preserved. It has to be used for good. And sometimes you have to allow it to rest also. So I'm currently doing a Parayanam of Lalita Sahasranam. I'm studying Lalita Sahasranam. I've started, doing regular Upasana. And I really recommend that, if you find any auspicious event, just take to the Devta of that particular event. If it's Ram Navami, take to Ram Bhagwan. If it's, Navratri, reach out to Goddess, Devi, Shakti. And Bhagwan will start relating to you in different forms. It works. It works. Anything else? Okay, so we close out for the week, and next week we'll conclude the final Dhyana Shloka verse, and then we enter the Bhagavad Gita. I know we've been saying this for a while, but there's so much to share, and it's a good thing. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Namaste.
Hari Om.
Huh.
Yeah, I mean, you can stop the recording, I guess, and then.
Yeah, 1 second.